Good to go. Angela Berry is starting to record. I'm here with my mentor. I am the mentee, and we're here to debrief. Let's do
Yeah.
it.
So I wanted to ask you first about one big question. I wondered if the lesson went different, like if it felt different when you were delivering it than it did when you were looking at it.
Well, yes, of course, you go into it with all the best intentions, expecting it to all be 100% perfect. But there's going to be some student behaviors. There are going to be a few hiccups that might even be technology that could happen. But luckily for me this time, I feel like everything kind of went pretty smooth.
I thought it did too. I asked because I know in this standard for this lesson, it has to do with understanding what's kind of age appropriate and understanding how the students you're working with learn, and also the whole introduction to this process of recording yourself and observing yourself, is it they mentioned that we learn from looking at ourselves. And now I was just wondering if it felt different for you, like, oh, if you notice things that you didn't notice while you were delivering it when you were actually reviewing it.
Yeah, I noticed that sometimes I could have slowed down in certain places. I could have maybe had a more than one turn and talk.
Okay.
So those are a few things I did.
I think that I was gonna give you some shine for your turn and talk because that's a big thing for us right now. And I love that you incorporated it. I think for kindergarten, to me, the timing. Oh,
First
it's first
grade.
grade? Oh, okay. Well, for lower grades like that, I felt like the one turn and talk was enough. I don't, and especially for this, like this was an introductory lesson. Sometimes I think for us in enrichment down the road a little bit when we've already talked about something for a while, maybe there's more stuff we want them to talk about. But I think the one was appropriate. And I know what you mean about pacing because I usually feel that way when I see myself too. But I think that what's happening is there's things we want to get in, and so I wanted to ask you when you're having the discussion, I was thinking about the timing on that. I didn't time it or anything like that, but I was wondering if there were certain answers you were looking for before you wanted to move on to the next part of the lesson.
Yes, they were, and actually, some of my guys, thankfully, like I said, they hit the answers right on the head, which allowed
Yeah.
me to go ahead and segue to the next part.
Yeah. So, how do you how did you feel about it? Like, were there things? Did you feel like there were things you would change if you were to do the same lesson again, or did you? I mean,
I
what
think it's
I
pretty.
wanted to hear your
I was,
feedback before I gave you mine.
I was pretty comfortable with every part of it, honestly, and I don't think I would change too much, except maybe if I had to say anything, I would probably add in some more technology. Probably could have added a Kahoot game or something like that, to
Mhm.
probably trigger prior knowledge or things of that nature,
Mhm.
or to do a comparison as far as like healthy and unhealthy people. Could have shown a picture of athletes and a picture of somebody on the couch.
Mhm.
Things of that could have been part of it. That's
Okay, I'm so glad you said that because I feel like, and of course, we've worked together for a long time, but um, I feel the same way. I felt like everything went really smoothly. I think, it didn't, there was nothing that I saw that I was like, oh, something didn't go as planned, or that's something that we need to talk about. I think everything went smoothly, and everything, this was a real natural, flow for you. It was evident that there were some things that the students, like routines that they're used to doing with you, like their opening, like their
Mhm.
class opening stuff, and hands to make me dance, and things that they're already familiar with that were
That I
used.
do, and I
Right.
usually do it all my health classes. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's obvious that, those are things they're familiar with. And, it's always good for us in this standard for this lesson about understanding how our students learn. I saw a whole lot of evidence of that. I saw, the understanding that, well, if you're just going to have a discussion with first graders, you have to make it animated, you have to make it entertaining. Even the seating arrangement that had them, in real close proximity, that had you elevated, that had their vision, their point of view, where they could see you real well and see the screen real well. All of those things are evidence that, you know, you understand what they need to stay focused and to stay engaged. And I saw the students being engaged the entire time, even when they had nothing in their hand, nothing to manipulate. They were fully engaged. So um, I think I think that's, I think that's what we're trying to get to. Like, there has to be that familiarity at the same time as we're introducing something new. And the activating the prior knowledge was there. The technology was there in a way that I thought was appropriate. I know that, in the environment we work in, this use of technology was consistent with what we do. If we were in a different place, if we think in terms of ourselves as educators, if we were to move to another school environment, or if our school environment were to change, maybe we have students who are one on one, one to one with technology, right? Then
Mhm.
maybe it would be appropriate to have a different level of technology. But for us, and at a first grade level, that I thought that was a very appropriate, use of technology, and not an over dependence on technology either, because there's interpersonal interaction, but also there were some writing skills, and I consider that as an enrichment teacher, that's still a cross curricular connection, even if it's not an actual another subject area, to have a activity where they had to circle and had to cross something out. That's consistent for them when they're in their math class, when they're in their ELA classes. So it's always good for us to reinforce those things. um, and so all of those, I think, were those evidences that we're looking for in terms of, I understand what these students need to learn. I thought the pacing was fine, but I can relate to how you feel about it, because watching ourselves, we're like, why was I rushing to say that? Or, just
Right.
because you know your own rhythm, and you could tell the difference between, when you're being watched and when you're not. But as an observer, the pace of it, there was no place where I felt like the pace was not appropriate.
Okay.
Um, I don't think, let me see, I have some little notes. I think that's all. I think those are all the things that, like, you pretty much touched on all the things that I was gonna touch on. The only thing, like I said, I think the lesson went really well. I would consider that a successful lesson. If I did it, if you did it, you know what I mean? I think if anyone came in and observed, they would have considered it, to have all the parts of our lesson cycle, you know, was intact, because there was a I do, we do, you do kind of a format. There was an exit ticket, so if you had a learning target that you needed written assessment on, you had that artifact. But when I think in terms of what could be better, if we wanted to expand, like, because we teach enrichment, we know this may be a lesson you would have to teach with multiple grade levels. I could
Mhm.
I could come up with things I might do different, or I might look for differently if you were teaching a different grade level with this, or if you were on day 2 or day 3 or day 4, where we've already introduced it, we've already looked at categories of healthy and unhealthy, and now we're digging in. But in
Right.
terms of this particular level, I think everything was there. I would say, just for sake of saying, just for detail, maybe the standard, maybe the standard posted on the board. I don't know if it was or not. Did you
Mhm.
have it posted?
Yeah, you just couldn't see from the
I
camera
couldn't see.
angles of the
Yeah, okay.
corner.
Yeah, and also, I know for me, this is not, I don't think that this was anything missing, but for me, because I teach in a visual capacity, sometimes if I have a slideshow or a video like that, that's a good place for me to put the standard, especially if it's a lesson I'm gonna do over and over and over again. So I don't have to keep putting it on board, erasing it off and putting something else. Um, the
That's a
other
good
thing
point.
I thought about, and again, this is me and my visual self, these are first graders, and you said, at the part where they checked each other's work, I was surprised that they seemed familiar with doing that, but my first thought was, do they know what that means? Like, give
Right.
it a so, our, smart board has that pen, and you can actually write. You could have, on top of where your video was displayed, if you wanted to, you could say, "You're gonna make a check mark like this on the person's paper," if you wanted that part to be more specific, and
Which
and
one?
I'm not even saying this as a piece that I felt was missing. It's just something that crossed my mind, especially considering that, we get observed all the time, and sometimes there's something that's noted where they need to find a way we can grow it.
Mhm.
And so it's good for us when we look at ourselves to look for where those things are, and not necessarily saying it should have already been there. But if someone challenged you and said, "What could you add to this?" And you're like, "It's already good. Why would I need to
Mhm.
add anything?" Some of the places you can look if you need to add something is just in the details. Just in the same thing I said, I also wrote it down. right?
Right.
Or the same thing they said, I recorded it on the anchor chart or on the screen or on the, or something. And that
Mhm.
again would depend on your grade level. So I think you covered all the bases with it. And you know, you could feel good about that. Being easy for you to do that is a plus.
This went better and smoother than I thought, so I'm so glad to
Oh,
hear
were you
that.
nervous about it?
Yes, I was nervous,
Why?
even though
You're a pro.
we've been working together for I don't know what 7, 8 years or whatever it is now. So it's still butterflies here and there. 'Cause, I hold you in a certain esteem as well. That's why I got you as my
Oh, I
mentor.
didn't know I was gonna get flattery too. Awesome. But no, it's all I think you're off to a good start with it. And I only am adding those details in just because I expect that you're gonna have I've looked at that whole rubric and I know that obviously this is the start of it. So if you're already looking for those little, nooks and crannies, I feel like it'll be easier for you, you know, down the road.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Of
I
course.
appreciate it. I
All
appreciate
righty.
you. We're gonna have I guess much more of these. So I'm glad
See
we
you
worked the
next
Zoom
time.
thing out. The Zoom
Okay.
thing is I love it. It worked out perfect.
Good job.